Fresh off the debate stage, both vice presidential candidates stepped back onto the campaign trail in Arizona yesterday. While in the key battleground state, Vice President Mike Pence said that it was President Trump who won Wednesday night's debate. And for the first time since August's Democratic National Convention, the party's vice presidential nominee, Kamala Harris, and her presidential running mate, Joe Biden, hit a series of campaign stops together. So, of course, this comes after yesterday's surprise announcement from the president that he would not participate in next week's now virtual presidential debate. In response, the Biden campaign said that the former VP would take questions directly from voters during its own town hall style event instead.
All right, so let's talk about this. Let's bring in USA Today Washington Bureau Chief Susan Page. She moderated the vice presidential debate Wednesday night. Good to see you, Susan.
Hey, Vlad, great to be back with you.
All right, so let's start with that debate. Both candidates dodged the questions that you posed, particularly on the topics of a succession plan and a peaceful transfer of power. You know, knowing that our own colleague Elaine Quijano also moderated a vice presidential debate 4 years ago, I know how difficult it is to get the candidates to respond to the questions, to stop sort of engaging in non sequiturs and attacking each other. What did you make of the fact that they were not answering the questions that you were asking and instead were just talking willy-nilly about whatever they wanted to talk about?
Well, first, a shout out to Elaine. I talked to her before the debate to get her smart advice on what to do, but it is hard. You know, I spent a lot of time trying to write narrow questions that would elicit, I hoped, specific responses, but sometimes the responses were not even on the topic at hand. And of course, the question of presidential succession, which I had planned to do late in the debate, moved up earlier in the debate because of the president's diagnosis with COVID-19, and his hospitalization has sharpened attention on the health and the age of the two presidential candidates. But yes, neither vice presidential candidate responded directly to my question, which was, have you talked to Joe Biden and Donald Trump about presidential succession and any safeguards that the country should expect?
You know, I got to give it to you because I've always said that being the moderator is such a thankless job, and especially in this era of social media where people are sort of immediately reacting to you and you're never making anyone happy. Everyone thinks that they could do a much better job than you. And so I want to talk to you about, you know, picking the topics, specifically immigration policies. The president, of course, as you know, has been criticized for his immigration policies throughout his presidency. The vice presidential debate was the second debate where we didn't hear anything about that key issue. And I know that you had it planned. You were going to bring up that topic, but there were time constraints and something had to give. So that's the topic that fell by the wayside. But I want to ask you, when you were sort of putting your questions together, looking at the topics, how did you consider, you know, what took priority? Did you look at the presidential debate to see what questions were or were not answered? Why did immigration end up kind of at the bottom like that?
Yeah, I was sorry about that. I was supposed to have 9 topics, 10 minutes each. Immigration was one of those 9 topics. And the order of the debate got adjusted on the fly because we were talking about the economy and climate change came up. So I went to climate change, which I had planned to do later in the debate. And then we got toward the end of the debate, and it was clear that we were going to have to drop a topic. And immigration, unfortunately, was the topic that dropped off. Here's what I was thinking in choosing those 9 topics. What do voters want to hear about? You know, I'm the Washington Bureau Chief of USA Today. There are things people in Washington care about that voters do not care about. I was trying to think about what could help a voter trying to make up their mind in this campaign. And that's why we did the issues of COVID-19, of course, of the economy, of climate change. I wanted to do one foreign policy question, so we did China. But there were big topics we missed, and immigration was certainly one of them.
Susan, let me jump off from the point that Anne Marie was sort of making in her initial question to you. I'm curious, I just saw an interesting column by the journalist Yashar Ali, who sort of questioned the way these debates have rolled out over the last couple of years, given the format, given the people who decide how these debates roll out are sort of Washington insiders, and that can be debated. But I'm wondering if you, just as a journalist now, removing your moderator hat, think that there's probably a conversation to be had in the next 4 years about if we're going to continue doing these debates, how they should look. For example, perhaps having, maybe it's not us, maybe it's not journalists who question these candidates. Maybe it's people who, perhaps doctors, if we're talking about a pandemic, or labor leaders, or teachers, professors, or perhaps people who decide the format of these debates, who include people on the board that include people like labor leaders, people who are college professors. I'm spitballing here based on what I read from Yasher's really interesting column, but I wonder if you think there's an opportunity here, given how these things have gone over the last 4 years.
But I definitely think we should have conversations about making these debates work better. But I don't think we should lose sight that we need to have these debates. They are a really crucial part of our democracy. If we didn't have debates, we would rely on paid TV ads and handpicked forums by the candidates to do things individually. The debates are the one time they stand next to each other and voters get to take a look at them and hear how they answer questions or how they don't answer questions. So the failure of the candidates to answer some of the questions I posed, that is also informative, I think, for voters. I think journalists are the best prepared to handle these, but maybe that should be discussed as well. But let's not throw out the baby with the bathwater. Let's not say debates have no value. Debates have huge value, even when they are complicated and problematic.
So, here's a topic that sort of came up after the first debate, the presidential debate, and then again with this one. The vice president often spoke over Senator Kamala Harris, and we know that the president, interrupted Joe Biden quite frequently, and the topic has come up. Maybe we should just mute your mic after 2 minutes. What's your take on that?
I'm all for thinking of ways to make this work better. I would be sad if we were at a state where we had two people running to be president of the United States and we had to mute their mics. I mean, I think that would be a sad day. I understand we're looking for solutions. Vice President Pence only occasionally talked over Kamala Harris. What he mostly did was talk on past his own time limits and ignore my best efforts to get him to stop talking. The one time that they were really talking over each other, I scolded them in a way my mother would have been appalled to see. Vice President of the United States, I held up my hands, I don't know if you saw that, as though I was a cop at an intersection to get them to stop. So the talking over, I thought, was not as big a factor in this debate as it was in the first one. Certainly, I hope our politics generally and our debates in particular return to a tradition of more civility and respect.
Yeah, I think all Americans want that. As you know, Susan, the campaign's final presidential debates have been thrown into uncertainty. Yesterday, the commission announced the event set for October 15th would be virtual. And this debate was set to be in the format of a town hall. The president says he doesn't want to participate. Vice President Biden says he'll be there or he'll do something else, and he'll be there for the third one. Yesterday, Anne Marie and I were talking about this with other guests, and I sort of noted that back in 1960, President John F. Kennedy and President Nixon, before they were presidents, engaged in a sort of virtual debate. And you recall back in 1992, President George H.W. Bush refused to participate in a debate because he didn't like the format, and that first debate was canceled. So I wonder, do you see a problem with, given the pandemic, given where we are in not being able to contain it, having both the president and Vice President Biden do a virtual debate? And what's lost, to your point about seeing these candidates for a couple more times before the election, what's lost in them not participating in one?
Yeah, I'll be sorry that these debates don't happen, but I got to say, political malpractice on the part of President Trump. He said he wouldn't participate in this virtual debate, a perfectly reasonable proposal given the fact that he has been diagnosed with COVID-19. This gives Biden an out, gives Joe Biden an out to not participate and not get blamed for not participating. And it's not Vice President Biden who needs this debate and the debate that follows. It is President Trump who needs to shake up the race, because we are heading toward a Biden victory if things don't change before the end of the election. I think it is unlikely that the debate next week, the town hall debate, is going to take place, but I bet we do see one more debate with the presidents, that debate that we expect to see on the 22nd of October.
Well, Susan Page, I want to thank you once again. I said it before, it's a thankless job, and you did a great job. Thank you,
Susan,
so much.
real quick, did you see the fly on Vice President Pence's head? Did you see it from where your vantage point?
You know, you'll be surprised, I was pretty focused, and I did not see the fly, and I walked off the debate stage afterwards, and all anybody was talking about was the fly, and I said, what fly?
So great, so great.
See, that's why I call it a thankless job.
I know, you're right,
Anne Marie. Debate. And who's the star of the debate? The fly.
No, you're the star, Susan, and the two candidates. We appreciate it. It's a thankless job, but we are thankful that there are people like you.
We thank you.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, thanks so much.
Thanks, Susan.
All right, so don't forget, the CBS News Battleground Tracker has real-time election polling and race ratings for all 50 states. All you need to do is download the free CBS News app or go to cbsnews.com/polls for the very latest.